Thank you all so much for joining us today for the Making the APPAM Conference Work for You workshop. It is great to see you all. My name is Jessica Geiger. I am a PhD student at Claremont Graduate University, and I'm a member of APPAM's Student Activities Committee. I'll be the host and moderator for this event. And I wanted to first start by thanking our wonderful panelists for being here today. So Kit, Becky, and Hortense. And they will introduce themselves in a bit later on in the workshop. But I also want to make sure to give a special shout out to Eric Henderson, who is a member of the Student Activities Committee and an Equity and Inclusion Fellow with APPAM. Eric was integral in the organizing of this event. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it today, but just a special shout out and thanks to him. So before we get to our panelists, I'm just going to go over some quick tips and tricks and tips for making the most of your time at APPAM and any other conference you attend as a student or throughout your career. And then we're going to go into our panelist Q&A portion of the event. And then, like I mentioned, they'll introduce themselves there. And then with whatever remaining time we have, we'll turn it over to audience questions. Okay, but first, conference goal setting. So APPAM's annual fall research conference has hundreds of sessions, countless networking opportunities, and many other ways to engage with academics and policy practitioners. There's simply no way to do it all. And it can be really daunting, especially for first-time attendees. So it's important to think clearly about what it is you want to gain by attending this or any other conference. So reflecting on what it is you want to take away from this opportunity will allow you to better plan and maximize your time. For me, conferences are all about learning about emerging research in my field and making new friends and expanding my network. But these goals are highly personal to you and will change as you move along in your career and academic journeys. But ultimately, like I mentioned, your goals will dictate what you should prioritize. If you are looking for mentorship, you might want to make networking events a priority and plan meetings with potential mentors prior to getting the conference. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But if you want to learn more about emerging research in your field, you'll probably want to prioritize the more research-focused events, such as the panels or the poster sessions, but you get the point. If you're not sure what your goal should be for your first conference, I encourage you to talk this through with your advisors or other students. But in my opinion, you really can't go wrong with setting the goal to expand your network and making new friends. So yeah, now that we have our goals in mind, we can plan with intention. Like I mentioned before, APPAM has so many wonderful sessions that it's just impossible to attend them all. So in order to maximize your time, you can review the online schedule and download the app once it becomes available. These are both extremely helpful resources. And then you can search for panels or poster sessions by your policy area of interest. This is just a snapshot from our website. And these are the different policy areas. And then you could just click on one of those and then it goes into the schedule for the conference with each of the poster and panel sessions that fall underneath each of these categories. And then you can utilize the search feature on the website or the app. And you can do a keyword search you could do a keyword search or you can search for specific scholars. So if there's somebody whose work you've been following, you can see if they're going to be presenting at the conference. And that's a great way to see what they're up to currently, work that is in progress. And then you can also meet them, which is really exciting. And then beyond the more research-focused sessions, APPAM offers many different types of events, including networking opportunities and mixers. For example, we have our first timers session on Wednesday, November 8th. This event is going to be hosted by one of our panelists, Hortense, which is very exciting. And this is a great event to ask questions and make new friends before the main conference begins on Thursday. This can be especially helpful if you are attending the conference by yourself. I know that Eric mentioned before that he attended the first timer session last year. And he was able to make a friend and like a conference buddy and was they met there at the conference and then they attended all sorts of sessions together and it just made the experience a lot better. And then we also have our annual student mixer on Friday, November 10th. Again, just a great place to build your network and make new connections. And also a special plug for this event because I'm hosting it. So I'd love to see you all there. And it is also worth taking a look at the events held by different APPAM communities. These communities are great spaces for connection and are a great place to find potential mentors. So we have at APPAM, our communities are BIPOC in public policy, data science, early career professionals, first-gen researchers, and LGBTQ plus researchers, undergraduate education community, and women in economics. And making time to connect. Conferences are unique in their ability to bring together researchers, practitioners, and students from all over the world. So take advantage, all of these people in one place at one time, and you can set up different conferences or coffee breaks and meetings with them. And as you look up panels or poster sessions, take note of and reach out to presenters whose work you're interested in. And set up coffee meetings with potential mentors or future research collaborators, or set up informational interviews with those in jobs that interest you. And don't forget about your fellow students. Current students make up the cohort that you will likely enter the job market with, and who you will work alongside for the rest of your career. And if you're nervous about sending out those emails, there's a website here that I'm going to drop in the chat in a bit. This just has a really great template and is really helpful. And then after the conference, it is always a good idea to follow up with whomever you've met along the way, and to make sure that the connections are long lasting. So sending up a follow-up email, maybe not the next day, but after the conference is done. And if you want some more questions on how to do this, you can always ask me, or again, talk to your advisors or fellow students. But with that concludes our brief tips and tricks. And now let's get to our panelists. If you all can introduce yourselves, so we can start with Kit. I'm not sure if Hortense is here yet, but if she is, hello, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Should I go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. It is great to see such a great turnout. I am Kit Carpenter. I use he, him pronouns. I am at Vanderbilt University in the state of Tennessee. I am your APPAM president, and I am super excited to see you all in Atlanta in November. At Vanderbilt, I'm an economist by training. I run the LGBTQ plus policy lab here at Vanderbilt. I'm a lifelong APPAM person. I think this is my 20th conference or so. I'm queer, I'm first gen, I'm adopted, I'm from Michigan. If you share any of those characteristics, I would love to meet you in person. And I'll be at all of those events and the kickoff events and the pre-event and all of that stuff. And so happy to be here today. Thank you.
All right, Becky, you want to go for it?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Becky Rafter. I'm a fourth year public policy PhD student in the School of Public Policy here at Georgia Tech. My focus is on energy and environmental policy with a more deeper focus on equity, justice, and community-based research. I'm from the South. I actually lived all over Tennessee. I'm also a queerdo, and I am a non-traditionally aged student. I'm 48, and I'm trying to organize a little older students group here on campus called the OGs, the older graduate students. Or I also had another idea for it, which was the grown folks group. Anyway, so I'm really excited to be here. Oh, and I'm a former chair of the APPAM Student Activities Committee, and this will be my third or fourth APPAM conference coming up here in Atlanta, and I'll be there, and I look forward to seeing you all. And Hortense, are you here?
Thanks, Becky. Hello, everyone. My name is Hortense, and I'm originally from Kenya. Happy to join you all on this call and to share some tips for the first-time attendees. I'm a human rights lawyer by profession and a recent graduate of a master's program at the University of Minnesota. I'm also a former or last year's Equity and Inclusion APPAM's fellowship recipient. So happy to be here, happy to share with you all and to discuss how this conference would be beneficial to all of us. Thank you.
All right, great. I'm going to put the questions in the chat just in case that is helpful for y'all. But we're going to start with our first question. What do you wish you knew going into your first conference? And then maybe, Kit, you can speak to what do you wish your students knew going into their first conference?
Sure. And I don't know which order you want us to go. Do you want me to?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
go for it, and kind of we'll make it a free-for-all if that's cool.
Okay, great.
Go with the
So,
flow.
fantastic. So here is the main thing that I wish my students knew about any conference, but especially APPAM, and that is the most important part is the networking. Is the meeting the people. One of the most, everything's important, but like one of the most important parts is the social stuff, is the hallway conversations, is the in-between session stuff. And so if you are generally a, shy-ish person, you should take advantage of the built-in things to meet people, such as that first-timer session, such as these, the identity group type communities, et cetera. And just asterisk, by the way, I think, when I saw the LGBT group, which will meet in that afternoon, it said researchers. If you're not a researcher, you should still come. It said first-gen researchers. If you're not a researcher, you should still come. It's really the people who share that characteristic. So if those are great built-in ways to meet people. This point about having a conference buddy, I think, is such a fantastic thing. If you're going to the conference and you don't know anyone, having somebody that you meet at that first session to, have somebody to go around to the different sessions with is such a valuable thing. But I think just the more general thing is some of the most important conversations and the benefits of this are the people that you meet. And so that stuff is not like written into the program explicitly, but it is kind of an unwritten benefit of a conference going in general and APPAM specifically. And I'll hand it off to Becky.
Okay, sure. So I would just agree with all of that. And I tend to be very focused on what my sort of my job is at the conference. So if I'm presenting or if I'm representing something or if I'm leading something, I'll tend to get very focused in that because I want to do a good job and I want to do what I'm, supposed to do in the way I'm supposed to do it. And sometimes I'll do that to the disadvantage of my own growth at the conference or in any type of space like that. And so I encourage people to do well with if you're presenting or if you're representing your school or anything, I would definitely take that job very seriously and prioritize that. And, just, make sure that you spend a lot of time on your own growth. And like Kit said, networking. I always tell folks when a session is over or a keynote speaker session has ended, most people leave, they kind of go to the back of the room. And my suggestion is to go to the front of the room, meet the people who spoke, meet the most important people. I mean, we're all equally important, but meet the people who are in charge and who make decisions. Meet Kit, go find Kit, and just introduce yourself. And all that, people like to be known. They like to meet people. And just all you do is say, oh, hi, I really enjoyed your speech, or I liked what you said on the panel about X. You don't have to remember everything or anything. You can just say that you appreciated what they had to say and just try to meet all the speakers and, don't be shy. And if you are shy, again, that's totally fine. Then what you can do is hang out with someone who's not shy. Because if I'm with people, I want to maximize everyone's benefit around me. So if I introduce myself to someone, because I'm very outgoing, I'll make sure that I introduce everyone else who's around me. Or I'll try to connect people and then walk away. Because it really is about all of us being in a community together. And at the end of the day, we are going to be on the job market. And so it's really good to meet with professors, speakers, in addition to ourselves as our fellow students who, again, Jessica mentioned, we're coming up in this process together and we will be cohorts in our careers. So yeah, nothing, I guess, new, but just, don't think people don't want to meet you because you're a student, because it's absolutely not true. And well, we'll talk about networking probably later. Okay, I'm gonna make sure Hortense has time on this one.
Thanks, Becky. I think you and Kat have already mentioned so much. I think one thing that I really wish I knew before going into the conference was being intentional about what I wanted out of the conference. Given that it's just a very short period of time, you need to be very, intentional, very key on what your end goals are. Are you coming to, want to know more research? Are you coming to build up your network? Are you coming to look at PhD programs around policy? Or, basically what is your end goal out of the conference? And for me, I feel that you could already start doing that by looking into the APPAM website, into the activities that are planned, the events that are there on the website, looking at the online program, just making sure that you already know what kind of sessions are available, so that you are very intentional on the sessions that you want to go to and who you want to meet. If it's the career or program PhD fair, that's the one that you intend to do. And also just getting ready, getting your materials ready, be it your resume, be it your elevator pitch, so that by the time you're going out to meet this person or you're going to speak about yourself, you already have a profile set, and you're already ready to sell yourself, not just to meet. Because I feel like networking is a two-way street. As much as you're meeting the other person, they're also meeting you, and you need to sell off, what your skills are, what your strengths are. And for me, that is just a big thing that I got to learn after going for the conference, because it was a very short period of time that you needed to get to know everyone, and also how to then make sure you have a way of noting down who you're meeting. Because I ended up meeting so many people, and at some point I couldn't follow through on who I was meeting and how it gets in touch with them after. So just being very intentional about the before and after out of the conference. Thanks.
Can I jump in with one more thing, Jessica?
Yeah, go for it.
So I one asterisk I wanted to say in the context of all of this, there's so much to do, there's so much networking, there's so many sessions, is the other thing that I wish my students knew, and the thing that I hear all the time in conference evaluations, is conferences are also exhausting, and you might underestimate that part. And I think I want to just emphasize, it is also fine and important for you to take care of yourself. So there is programming from like the time you get up to the time you go to bed, and you can't do all that I can't do all of that programming. Like, I'm going to do a lot of it, but sometimes I just need to go back to my room and shut the door and be with myself for a few moments. And that is totally fine. You're not good networking or doing your pitch if you're exhausted, if you haven't had exercise, if you haven't eaten, these types of things. So if you have key daily routines, if you need to make sure that you're taking self-care in addition, because it'll sneak up on you, and you'll be at the end of day one and you'll realize, oh, it's been great, but I totally did not plan that my body was going to feel this way after a day of great research, great sessions, great networking, etc. So you just have to pace yourself a bit, because there's a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, just in terms of like when planning with intention, also planning in your breaks. So that's great. Thank you so much, Kit. So I know that all of you touched on the networking aspect of this. So what is the best way to network at the conference, especially as a first-time attendee and a student? I know, Becky, you had some thoughts, so go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, I just would suggest like approaching this in three ways. First of all, if you're at a point in your career, in your learning, that you have identified people that you definitely want to meet and they're going to be there, it's totally fine to reach out to them in advance and say, hey, I'm going to be at the conference. I'd love to talk with you about maybe hearing more about your research, or I think you'd be a great mentor, or I just want to meet you in person. I've read many of your articles. It's totally fine to reach out to a person in advance, and just it doesn't have to be like you make an exact time to meet, but let them know, I would like to try to come to your panel, or something like that. And you never know what can come of that, and be open to grabbing coffee or tea with someone. Another thing to do is if you're like, our school would print out business cards for a very low amount. I mean, I'm grandfathered into having business cards, so I always have business cards. You hand someone a business card, they have it, they remember you. If you don't, you can do an electronic business card. And then I totally agree with what Hortense said. Just like have a little notebook or like pick up one of the printed guides of the conference, and then I always write out beside. Again, I'm grandfathered into having things in print. I always write down like a little star in the person's name or the journal they're talking about, or and then I get home and I go through all the notes. And I'm really bad with follow up, but I try to do all my follow up, and then definitely follow up and be like, oh, hey, I met you after your panel. Again, I just want to say it was great to meet you, and I'd love to have, what's a great way for me if you want to talk to the person further, just email and say, because you can get everyone's emails, most of them anyway, on their school websites. If you didn't, a lot of times they won't have cards, but if they have one and you give them a card, they'll give you a card, or even if you don't have one. But then just reach out to them and say, hey, it was great meeting you. Again, I'm blah, blah, who, and I like to blah, who. And then you can say, what's the best way to try to get on your calendar to schedule a meeting? And that way they might put you in touch with their assistant, or they might say, oh, I don't have a great time, but about November, or, whatever. So that's just what I would do. And just always thank people, even if you just meet someone, it's great to send them an email. I don't think it has to be right away. In fact, I don't suggest doing it right away, because when people get back from a conference, everyone's behind from their work and they're exhausted. So my suggestion is kind of wait for a minute for it to die down, like maybe a few days or a week and a half, and then say, oh, hey, because then you're going to kind of stand out. You're not going to be in the conference traffic. And then you can be like, hey, I really would like to chat with you. I share this interest, blah, blah, blah. So, just again, believe in yourself, believe that you matter, and just know that just going up to someone and saying hi, introducing yourself, it can be very painful for people. And it can be very rewarding, and I highly recommend it. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say that's a great tip on waiting a little bit to make sure that you get to the top of the inbox and you're not in the influx of emails that we all receive after a conference. So that's great. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add to that? Hortense?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think I was very intentional in terms of my networking. I began very early on by engaging in the mentee mentor program. So if you're part of the mentee mentor program, that is one way getting to meet your mentor during the conference. So it opens up a very good opportunity to meet in person, to interact with the mentor in person. So that was one of the ways I ended up networking during the APPAM conference last year. A second thing that I did was really utilize LinkedIn. I think we underuse it most of the time, but so many of the people who will be speaking are already on the website, so you could easily search them, get to connect with them over LinkedIn, get to follow their work, so that by the time you're even meeting them, you already know part of what the work they're doing and the areas that you'd want to seek out additional information, or the policy work that they're writing on that probably touches on the work that you're also doing. So that was also another way that I ended up using the networking. And then thirdly, I also really made it intentional, not just only to meet the policy researchers, but also to interact with the students themselves, because we are all working in different policy areas. And therefore, even as you get to connect with the policy professionals, you also have a team within you, students across the US institutions that are working on different policy issues. So do not miss the chance to get to know what they're also working on, the policy areas that you're working on, and areas you could possibly collaborate on, particularly in future APPAM conferences, because we have opportunities where you could do panels together, you could write policy papers together. So this is also a chance for you to get to know who within your school or around the area is doing the work that you're interested in, or doing a piece that you think is interesting and would want to get to learn more. Thanks.
I will just jump in. Those are fantastic suggestions. I agree with all of them. Just to build on this great thing that Hortense just said about like networking with and other students and considering them as mentors, I totally agree with that and would just extend that a little bit. Like while there, of course, the full professors and the fancy people who are very senior in the field, you want to meet them as well. But like you should think of like other PhD people who are just a little bit more advanced in their careers than you, right? Who have gone through the same types of decisions that you have gone through or will soon go through. So, for example, assistant professors probably get far fewer inquiries than, say, full professors. And so that might be a nice kind of step, put your toe in the water in terms of somebody who might be more likely or willing and able to answer your questions or, you know, be more recent, more proximal to the life choices and experiences educationally that you or job wise that you will be making. I can't remember, haven't been on the job market for 20 years, right? I can give you advice about searching for jobs, but it will be very outdated versus people who assistant professors really just did that. And so I love this idea about kind of being open about a range of people that you might network with and find mentors. The most concrete suggestion I have is use your phone. So the thing that I do most often at a conference is when I'm talking with someone is I say, do you mind if I take a photo of your name tag? So that I can remember. And then right after the conference, I just have like a slew of name tags and faces of people so I can put a name with the face. And it's a really great concrete way. I will also say that like some people are good with emails, some people are good with faces, some people are good with names, and some people are horrible at those in various different combinations. And that's just the way humans are. And so while at the same time you shouldn't be shy about approaching people, well, A, make sure you always ask before you take the photo, but also B, most people will say yes. B, don't be offended if people don't remember you immediately, for example, at future interactions, because some people are just bad with faces, some people are just bad with names. And so this happens to me all the time. And so you just, you know, if you've met somebody before, you could remind them the conditions under which you had met, or, you know, you had seen their talk in another context. And so you were especially excited to see their talk this time. But I will just say a general thing about the more senior people that you might be interested in meeting and contacting. Yes, don't be shy in reaching out to them, but also don't be offended if they are slow to reply or don't reply, just because they are probably getting more inquiries, more of those types of emails. And a general thing for students, I tell my students and ed trainees and mentees this all the time. You know, it's very easy to think that like, oh my gosh, people are thinking about me so much, and the failure to get a quick response says something about their view about me. The truth of the world is like nobody's thinking about you as much as you think that they are thinking about you. And so people are very well meaning at APPAM and people want to meet you and that kind of thing, but you shouldn't, you just want to kind of have context, not to kind of, you know, do self-defeating things or feel bad about yourself if the reply either doesn't come or comes a little bit slower. But I agree with everything else. Those are great tips on networking.
Yeah, that's great. And a good point about the junior faculty members, especially. These are also people that will, alongside our other students, junior faculty are people we're probably going to be working alongside with for a long time. So it is great to make those connections early and often. So thank you. And I never thought about taking a photo of somebody's name tag. That is such a great idea. And then I think you guys touched on this a little bit, but if you want to talk about it a little bit more in terms of the tips on how to approach people, and maybe in person it's scary, or online, what is the etiquette there? Is LinkedIn, like what Horton said with LinkedIn, that's a good way to contact people, but any tips on how to just like first that initial contact?
I can jump in and just say, I mean, if it's just an in-person situation, I would just go to the person and, you know, and say hi and introduce yourself. You don't have to know who they are. I introduce myself to almost everybody that I meet because I had even the whole like associate, assistant, full, like I didn't even learn that was a big difference recently. Like I don't I didn't have a lot of experience in academia. And so to me, every single person that you meet is an important person, and you're gonna and I don't want you to be afraid to meet people who seem a little less accessible. So just, I mean, the way I approach people is literally, I just smile, I'm smiling, and I just say, hey, if they're talking to someone else, I wait for a minute. If they don't like acknowledge me at all, like, oh, I'm talking, but I'll be with you in a minute, then I just kind of don't wait that long, because I feel like you know if someone's waiting to talk to you, and sometimes people will give you a little bit of ignoring. So not very few. So I don't kind of try to stick around for those folks. But yeah, just smile, be yourself, and trust that you're doing the right thing. And challenge yourself a little bit to make that outreach and just say hi. I'd love to meet you. I'm so and so, but just like, or maybe elbow or whatever. Just the most thing about approaching is just walking up to the person and smiling and let them know that you think they're important, and that you're also saying, I'm important too because I'm coming to meet you. You get to meet me. Think of like that or something.
Yes, that initial confidence, it's always a little scary, but yeah, I really like that. And I guess like a couple of key phrases that you can prep beforehand, hi, I'm so and so. I really like your work. And those always help me just beforehand because I do have a bit of the social anxiety. So coming up with those key phrases that I can rotate through when I approach people is always nice to have in your back pocket. Yeah, go ahead, Kit.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of things. One is just to keep in mind that these interactions do not have to be long. So one thing that makes people especially nervous is like, I don't know what I'm going to say in the third interaction or the fourth sentence, right? But sometimes it's a 2-sentence interaction and that's it. You just say how much you enjoyed it. And if there's a follow, you just go with the natural flow. And if there's not a follow-up, then all you've done is you've introduced yourself, you've let that person know you enjoyed their talk, and that's fine. And you can still follow up with an email if you have related work. I think another thing that's helpful to folks is, especially those of you that are students, if you've interacted, many of the people presenting will be academics. Academics are slightly awkward. Okay, they're very awkward, right? We get it. Like there's a range of people who have a different range of skills in interpersonal interactions, and the presenters span the range. And so just like, it's not a comment about you if an interaction goes badly or if it's a little bit awkward. Let me be clear that that's very different than if an interaction is like straight up inappropriate or rude. Like those should just be reported to management. I don't think those are going to happen, and that should not be a reason. APPAM is a great conference. We have a great code of conduct. People act professionally, etc. And there are mechanisms in place if something like that happens that you tell people, including myself. The vast majority of interactions are going to be lovely and pleasant, if maybe a slightly bit awkward. And that's also, though, that's the nature of the profession and of the many interactions you will have in your future professional life will be like slightly awkward, and that's fine. And you might as well get used to it. The other thing that I'll say in terms of a concrete tip is the job fair and the grad school fair. Those are great like warmer interactions or tester interactions because like those people are not awkward. They are like in those jobs because they are like they've competed for a job, which is interacting with people and trying to get you to apply to their job or come to their graduate school. And so those are great interactions to have, both because you might be interested in their job opportunity or their graduate school, but also like they will get you in the mode of having interactions with people that you absolutely do not know, that are probably going to be very lovely and like natural. And oh, by the way, you might be independently interested in the information you will receive through those interactions.
Thanks, Kat.
And you don't have to meet everybody. Like I've also learned just the work that I've done in my life to just kind of follow my instincts and follow my gut and follow when I'm moved to speak or to meet someone. And that also helps me to know how to put one foot in front of the other. And so just also trust your instincts and, challenge yourself, but don't like make it to where you're like uncomfortable. Like we don't want you to be uncomfortable. There's always the opportunity to make a note and say, oh wow, like I really loved what Kit said, and I'm gonna just send an email later, which is more comfortable for me, or I'm gonna send a LinkedIn message. And then that way you are really having a lot of Kit's attention because you're saying, or Hortense's attention, you're saying, you're set aside this, you're in this like other total space of like, I didn't come at you because you were so busy, I didn't want to bother you, so you're also just be yourself and trust yourself. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have great trust for yourself and continue learning about yourself through this process.
I was just going to add one last thing, or last tip that can work, especially if you feel that you're very shy and very introverted and you feel very nervous to speak with the person. What I ended up doing at times when I felt that I wasn't able to go to this person by myself, I went with a buddy.
So someone within, your school who you already know, who can speak and be there with you. It provides some level of comfort knowing that you're speaking to a stranger, yes, but you have someone else right next to you who knows you, and they can, chime in here and there when there's the awkward silence or when you're waiting for a response. So don't be afraid to walk up, as a group, as two, as three people, to speak with the person you want to speak to, because either way, all of you are still networking, all of you are still building those relationships. So it's a way of just, ensuring that you get the best, you maximize the opportunity and get the best out of it. Thanks.
Yeah, I love that. The going up in numbers and with your other friends to back you up, that's a great idea. And I also love the idea of the warm-ups, the going to the job fair and warming up how to do the networking and introducing yourself beforehand. That's a great tip. And like Becky said, with the kind of trusting yourself and making sure that you're interacting when you feel comfortable to do so, that's a great point. And not trying to push it. And yeah, in other modes of communication rather than the in person, if that doesn't feel right in the moment, that's okay. You don't need to beat yourself up about that. You can just email afterwards. That's great. And so with the, we talked a lot about the networking opportunities. We do have, the after the sessions, after the panels and the posters, introducing yourself and whatever mixers. But what other session, like for the actual sessions and the research panels and posters, there's so many of them. Do you all have a tip on how to approach picking which sessions you go to and which ones you decide not to go to? Yeah.
I think I largely went for the sessions based on my interests and just curiosity generally, because sometimes when, say, the president was speaking or was giving a remark, I wanted to be in that session because I wanted to know the overall big picture of what APPAM is all about and what the strategic, opportunities are, and where's the vision and, where we're heading. But in terms of the others, it could sometimes I went for the sessions because my school or someone from my school was presenting within that session, so I wanted to support them and be there. Other times it was because I was interested in the policy area that was being, presented. So it was maybe on peace and I'm a peace and security person, so it was things looking around areas around peace and security or topics around peace and security or international security. So those were the ways they could do it. And then other times we were just out of wanting to get to know a different group of people. So with the Equity and Inclusion Fellowship, I also just I went to different sessions so that I just got to know the different communities and opportunities that were there to advance diversity within APPAM, because then I was being very intentional about what diversity looks like for APPAM. And I wanted to know, do we have women groups? Do we have groups for international students? Do we have groups for Black students? And in that way, then I got to look at, sessions that were around diversity and inclusion, and then just chose those.
I go to the things with food. There are wonderful events that have food and drink, and that's both filling and wonderful, but also like a natural conversation starter, and it's social and it's easier to meet people. I especially love the poster sessions, which also coincide with food usually, because you can see lots of different research in a very short amount of time. And it's like a built-in way, people are standing right there, right next to posters, hoping that you come up to talk to them about their research. And there are research areas from every single research aspect, topic area represented in the poster. So I always make sure to see the posters, and I always make sure to be where the food is.
I'm going to put in, I love that answer, by the way. I think it's my favorite answer of all time of any call. I'm going to put in the chat, like the notes I drew up about this for y'all. And what I'm going to suggest is going backwards and putting yourself first. So before you get all overwhelmed with everything, I suggest that you look at a map of the space so you know where things are. that you figure out when there's going to be food, like when you can go to events that will have food and when you need to make sure that you feed yourself. And also I would like go ahead and plan that you want to plan your downtime. If you're in a city where you have a family or a friend and you want to see them, or you know, just I have this stuff at the end of my list here. I'm gonna pop my little list here just in case it's helpful. Like, oh, it says my message is too long. In case it's helpful, I'll do it in a couple little messages. This is just in case it's helpful. But I would look at, I'm just suggesting to do the parts at the bottom first, since they are more focused on yourself. And then you'll get a sense of, you'll start looking at because it's overwhelming. It is a lot of information. And I oftentimes tell people, if it's like a big, you know, thick article full of like methods, I'm like, just start at the back and, you know, read it backwards if you need to, and then read it forwards again, because you'll be familiar with stuff. So maybe try something like that with this event, where you're starting with yourself and like what's going to be the best for you to make it through this conference and not be totally exhausted, to be able to make the most of it. You kind of have to put yourself first too. So those are my little pieces. You can read them later.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And I do want to ask like a follow-up question for when you're searching for sessions and whatnot, what did you find the most helpful? Did you do just keyword searches like through the website, like kind of a technical question? What was the best way for you to find the things that were interesting to you? Just going through the policy interests and seeing it that way and just kind of picking, or did you have a more targeted way of finding things that were interesting to you?
Well, I'll say that some of the communities groups are very helpful in that respect. So for example, I'm part of the LGBTQ plus communities group, and somebody there, and I don't know who it is, they went through the entire program for all of the queer identified people and said, hey, all of these sessions have some queer aspect. You might be interested in this given your own identity. And I am interested in those. And so they did it for me, and they tell you exactly where they are, when they are, etc. So I don't know if any other communities groups do that, but the LGBT, thank you. Yes. Amy Cummings did that, and it's like an enormous service to those of us who saves hours and hours and hours of time for those of us that are interested in those sessions.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so I think we're gonna just do maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll turn it over to audience Q&A if y'all have any questions. But for one of our last questions, I do want to ask, what is in your opinion, what is the best resource at APPAM for students and first-time attendees, and what should they not miss out on? I know the food was a big one. Anywhere where there's food, don't miss that. Anything else? One of the things that, sorry, go ahead, Hortense.
Now, I was going to say there are various mixers that, you know, students can get a chance to get in even from their own schools, because I remember last year several institutional, you know, members had different functions, different dinner events for their schools, for their specific schools. So if you already know that your school is going to have that, that is also, you know, one way that you could just, you know, get to interact with the people, because sometimes they bring alumni within the session, or, you know, past professionals who've been with APPAM for a longer period of time. But also just generally the mixers for me was a big resource, just because it was an easy way to, out of the formal sessions, interact and network without the pressure of, you know, having to say so much about policy, but more around, you know, easy ways to connect about, you know, the challenges, say, of the cost of living, and then the conversation then, you know, goes to other areas around policy and how, you know, you can make it better. So for me, those were, other than just the website and the resources and the people, those were the easy ones that I could easily just go in without feeling too pressured, you know, that I need to have my policy on point and that, but just to go out and be myself and put myself out there and interact with others.
Yeah, that's great. We have our student mixers, another plug for our student mixers. We have the first time attendees on Wednesday, and then on Friday, we have that student mixer. So great opportunities. And one thing that I do want to plug here, which I thought was really cool and I learned about, was the headshot area. So you guys can get your pictures taken. Something that I did not realize was going to be a big part of my academic life was a headshot. So I thought that was an excellent resource that APPAM provides. But now I want to go ahead and turn it over
Sorry.
to on. Yeah, go ahead.
One more thing, they did some lotteries kind of things where you could go in and do games and get free APPAM items, t-shirts, pens and stuff. And I thought that was also a very good resource because then you go back with a memoir, a reminder of what the APPAM conference is about, and I feel that was also a good resource to kind of go back with, because then you either come back with a pen or a shirt, but either way it's a reminder of your time at the conference. So visit the APPAM booth and get get to get to win some of those goodies.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great call. I love the swag at the end. But okay, if y'all have any questions, go ahead and please put them in the chat, or you can unmute and ask your questions. If not, I have a few others that we can go through. All right, I can ask one really quick just while people think and formulate and type in the chat. So what is an ideal post-conference strategy? I know we talked about follow-ups and maybe waiting to check back in with people that we met throughout, but do you have any other tips on what to do post-conference, like a debrief for yourself?
I love the idea if you have an academic advisor, for example, if you're a PhD student and you have a dissertation advisor, sitting down and making a meeting with your supervisor to talk about kind of what went well, what didn't go well, what you learned, what advice you need on specific interactions you had or specific people you met or specific papers you saw that maybe have implications for your work, etc. Somebody who wasn't at the conference, being able to translate your conference experience to them, I think that can be really helpful.
I also think that there are opportunities for you to get involved more as students. So personally, I got involved in the Student Activities Committee right after the conference, because that's when I got to know that, students can, have a voice, can have a chance to influence what goes into the APPAM conference and how it's held. So for me, post-conference was how would I get involved? And there are opportunities for you to get nominated by your school, by the institutional school, for you to join the Student Activities Committee or the Policy Council. So these are opportunities that you can also explore post-conference if you're interested in, bringing in new ideas, diverse ideas about what you want to see going forward.
Yeah, that's all great. Thank you. So the post-conference chat with your advisors and mentors, and then the getting involved. Love that. So we have a question in the chat here. Could you please elaborate more on how to approach people when they are speaking with someone else? You mentioned to wait a minute, how far you should wait, and so on. Any other tips on just the etiquette and how to approach people while they're speaking with somebody else?
I can just respond to that since I brought it up. I would suggest waiting as long as you want to. Depends on how much you want to talk to the person. So that's like just totally a subjective decision. Sometimes there'll be a line. Sometimes people like a line. Sometimes people kind of move to the front of the line. So don't be afraid to not like, don't be afraid to like stay in your place in your line. But yeah, I usually will always wait to meet a person unless I like weigh the like cost and benefits of, okay, could I be talking to other people, or could I go talk to other people, then come back to this person. Because if it's a reception, they're going to be around. So you don't have to wait too long. But if it's after a session, a panel session, then you know they're going to skirt afterward. One of my favorite networking things to do is to walk someone to their next appointment. So, you know, I'll just be like, oh, can I walk with you? Because no one's going to follow them. Well, some people will do this. So that's another thing is that you can always just walk with them. And again, if you wait forever and they still can't, and it still has breakups and they have to run away, you can always, like the stuff gets broken up, you can always send an email. So it's subjective.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to something you said earlier about the confidence, and like you're there too. So you can take up space and time if you really want to talk to this person. Just wait it out. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, let me see if there's anything else in the chat. So I think that there was a question specifically about the affiliate events. So can you clarify if these events are intended for those interested in a program, school, or for networking between alumni and faculty? Thank you. Does anybody else have insight into that, the affiliate events?
That's a great, please, Leslie, go ahead. Please, Leslie, go ahead.
I'm gonna jump in here. It's a mixture of both. So it's a great way for you to like network with alumni and faculty at the school. Then if you're also interested in like a program or degree at the school, you can connect them with them that way. We also have our PhD and career fair. So I encourage you guys to review. I'll share the link down below. I encourage you to review the schools and employers participating in the fair. And that's like another way to connect with schools that have like a degree program that you're interested in, or potential employers as well.
As always, Leslie said it best, and Leslie's real-time commentary and links in the chat are exactly on point. So thank you, Leslie.
Yes, thank you, Leslie. Just I'll be at the PhD fair, so y'all wanna chat, I'll be there. But let's see if there's anything else in the chat. Great, I think that's pretty much it. And we can go ahead and wrap up. Yeah, again, I just wanted to say thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you there. This is super exciting. And we do have these SAC events. Those are the Student Activities Committee events. And it's just a great way to meet other people. And like I said, I'm very excited to meet y'all. If you want to come by, my contact information is here. And yeah, I wanted to thank all of the panelists for sharing their time and their wisdom with us today. And thank you so much for Leslie and the APPAM team for putting this together. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do stuff like this. So thank you so much. And follow, get connected on social media. This is also something that's important for networking after the events. So, and also to see who's there and what, like using the hashtags. I know the hashtag APPAM, and I think that there'll probably be others that are going to be used. If y'all know, go ahead and put them in the chat here now. But you can go ahead and contact me afterwards if you have any specific questions, or Leslie, I think she's available for to chat as well if you have any specific questions. There we go. APPAM 2023 is the hashtag for this year for our conferences. And yeah, thank you all so much for participating and attending.